actually important, but what exactly are the ideal ethic, to monetize your skills as a tech entrepreneur? So stay tuned to the next panel
Exactly.
session where we'll be
Exactly.
discussing ethical financial options for Muslim entrepreneurs and innovators in Nigeria, the challenges and the prospects. And to moderate this session is Hamida Abdurrahman.
Yeah, Ibrahim, just remind our viewers at home that we can still.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Hamid Abdurrahman and I welcome you to this session on ethical financial options for Muslim entrepreneurs and innovators in Nigeria. We are here to discuss the challenges and prospects. I hope you all enjoyed the previous session on healthcare. Now, I have my speakers here. Welcome all. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Umar Husseini, Mr. Fatai Olayemi, and Mr. Ridwan Sanusi. Welcome, sirs.
Thank you. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We are glad to have you here on this session on ethical financial options for Muslim entrepreneurs, and I believe you would do justice to everything that has to do with the challenges and prospects regarding fintech. Now, a brief introduction about Dr. Umar Husseini. Dr. Umar Husseini is the CEO and Executive Director of the International Muslim Liquidity Management Corporation. He is the acting CEO and Executive Director of, like I said, of International Islamic Liquidity Management Corporation, which is a supranational financial institution headquartered in Kuala Lumpur. I hope I spelled that right. Now, prior to this, he was an associate professor of law and regulation of Islamic finance at the Islamic University in Malaysia. Dr. Umar Hosseini was also a visiting fellow at the Islamic Legal Studies program of the Harvard Law School, Harvard University from 2011 to 2012. Apart from being a Harvard certified negotiator and dispute resolution expert, Dr. Umar has consulted for numerous bodies in the areas of law and regulation of Islamic finance research and publication, and alternative dispute resolution in Islamic law. He has well co-authored the highly coveted book Fintech in Islamic Finance. And we also have our Muslim finance coach in person of Mr. Ridwan Sanusi. Mr. Ridwan Sanusi is a seasoned corporate trainer, a qualified chartered accountant, and a certified financial education instructor. Over the past 7 years, Mr. Ridwan has trained and coached thousands of working professionals and entrepreneurs across different walks of life and supported them on their journey to financial success. We also have with me Mr. Fatai Olajemi, who is an enterprise development professional. I'm sorry, Mr. Olayemi has over 16 years of experience in designing and implementing enterprise growth strategies for Nigerian entrepreneurs and their businesses. So come with your questions. He's going to do justice to all of them. Now, once again, I welcome you all, sirs. We have another panelist, which is supposed to be Mr. Tajuddin Olaribibe, but he's not here yet. Now, Mr. Ridwan Sanusi, can you just give us a brief introduction to what fintech is? I mean, most of us just know that, okay, we have Shola and Ezra. The past 2 weeks, it's all about Shola and Ezra, Paystack, and all. So can you just give us a brief introduction to what fintech is, sir?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for inviting me for this session. This is actually the first time I'm going to be talking about, fintech. So I'm really, really excited to be here with you guys today. All right. So a quick introduction to what fintech is all about. Simple definition. It's basically, a platform where finance meets technology, right? So where you make good use of advanced or technological advancements in the financial system, right? And there are so many areas where you would find the use of technology in fintech. So you mentioned the likes of Shola, which is or rather, who is the CEO of Paystack, which was recently acquired by Stripe in the US, right? So that is just one area. There's so many areas in fintech, like a digital bank, like Kuda, a P2P lending, like Fins and Kia. You have the savings and investment hubs, like PiggyVest, right? And so on and so forth. So again, simple definition of fintech is where finance meets technology.
Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Now, our Dr. Umar Usaini, can you please tell us why we should care about ethical finance?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this panel session, and I'd like to thank the moderator, Sister Hamida. First and foremost, I think it's important for us to look at what is ethical finance itself. Again, ethical finance, it's commonly used to describe finance, which takes into account not only the financial returns, but what you call the environmental, social, and governance factors. So looking at these three factors, the environmental, social, and governance factors, one would like to ask whether this is really what we call Islamic finance. I do understand why the organizers had to use this term ethical finance, but it's good to clarify at the very beginning that ethical finance itself may not necessarily be Islamic finance. Ethical investing itself refers to the practice of using one's ethical principles as a primary filter for the selection of securities investing. Now, when you talk about personal filter or primary filter, here we talk about people who use their own judgment. Catholics, Christians have their values as well as Muslims. So some do not actually, invest in things like illegal arms. So all these filtering processes may all be regarded as ethical finance. So ethical finance generally depends on the investor's views. So ethical finance is not necessarily Islamic finance. And I would like to emphasize, here is the deal. Not every form of ethical finance is Islamic, but Islamic finance has all the elements of ethical finance. However, I don't understand what is meant by ethical finance for today's purpose is Islamic finance. So I would like to quickly answer the question now. Now, why should we care about ethical finance? To answer this question, one may need to look at the purpose of our creation as human beings, whatever religion you are, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. There is one purpose of creation. There's a creator somewhere. And the purpose, basically, as Muslims understand it, is to worship God itself. So if you talk about ethical finance from this perspective, then you will talk about economic justice. You talk about being vicegerents of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. And if you talk about that, you have a responsibility. A vicegerent or Khalifa, what we know as Khalifa, from the Islamic balance, involves responsibility to take care of certain things. In the Quran, Muslims believe that you shouldn't actually create any kind of facade or evil on earth. And there are verses on this in the Quran. And if you don't have to do that, why? Because Allah has made everything perfect. So the default rule generally is that everything is perfect until when human beings come to disrupt it, economically, socially, and otherwise. So ethical finance itself will actually be leading to kind of economic justice, where people will not actually act in an unjust manner to others. So there are a lot of things I wouldn't want to go into for now, but I just want to start with this kind of a global overview of why we should care about ethical finance. It actually implies caring about other people, not only one's kind of greedy kind of nature as much as possible. So as established in the verse of the Quran, I think Quran 4 verse 29, which talks about do not eat up your property amongst yourself in a kind of falsehood. It's quite important to note that the hallmark of that particular verse entails everything about ethical finance. Don't eat up your property, amongst yourself in falsehood, except when you engage in kind of mutual business transactions. Yeah, and this is what Allah emphasizes. And when you talk about this verse entails justice. You have to ensure there's justice at the center of every transaction you enter into. People must actually put principles before profit as much as possible to ensure mutual satisfaction in all dealings. Then ethical finance goes beyond just the immediate parties, but it has some implication on the entire ecosystem. Therefore, do not kill one another through your business dealings. Ends the verse. When scholars interpret this last part of the verse, for me, we need to look at the broad interpretation. Because when Allah talks about at the end of this verse, when Allah is talking about economic dealings, so that means you can kill yourself economically. You can affect other things, basically. So these are some of the hallmark of what you call ethical finance from the general perspective without going into specifics yet. So as much as possible, I think as human beings, we have to care about this, whatever religion we belong to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, you've introduced us to what ethical finance is. You made reference from the Holy Quran and you spoke generally about ethical finance. Now, thank you, sir. We would like you to tell us what currently available options we have, sir.
Okay, when it comes to the available options, I think this is a tricky question. I'm currently not in Nigeria, so I guess the Muslim coach, Muslim finance coach will be able to actually say more about this. But let me actually start with the available options based on what I know. I'm going to talk from the global perspective here. I think I've left Nigeria for the past, close to 13 years already. So, but again, not what's happening there. So I'll talk generally in terms of the available options. Now, when it comes to ethical finance, and again, I would like to focus my discussion on Islamic finance, or what is called non-interest financing. Because if you talk about ethical finance, I'll tell you, the Jews have a perfect model of ethical finance as well. So I won't go into all this. We actually did a very thorough research on this about 10, 15 years ago. At Harvard Law School, when we actually analyzed the Jewish model and the Catholic model and the Islamic model as well. So now when it comes to the available options for Islamic finance from the Nigerian context or global context, first and foremost, though this looks very kind of interesting, people will say, come on, what and no bank will give Qard Hassan. Qard Hassan simply means benevolent loan. You have brothers who have good ideas, they want to actually fund a particular kind of project. They're innovators, they need money. You can actually speak to brothers and sisters around, starting from your relations, starting from your friends. People can actually give loans. This is something important. People do this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasized on this in the Quran as well. So we have to explore this. I think our problem today is, from the economic perspective, we fail to teach this at the family level. Once you're bringing up kids, you have to start teaching them not only how to pray salat, teach them about the muamalat aspect as well. This commercial transaction, the civil transaction, how do you deal with others is very important. Because when you talk about this kind of aspect, Allah talks about in the Quran, give the kith and kin, those who are close to you, give them their rights. Their rights, and do not waste. I mean, the verse continues like that. Now, what I'm trying to emphasize here is the first layer will be those who are close to you, and this is possible because the resources are available. As much as possible, we should try to empower our younger ones, our family members. So this is where Qard Hassan comes in. Interest-free loans from the family itself. Because I'll tell you, no bank will give you interest-free loans here because they are not Father Christmas. But if possible, we have to see how we can actually tap into this. That's number one. Number two is, I always say this, the CBN introduced a non-interest financing intervention, a few months ago. And one way or the other, I'm involved on the other side at the global level because CBN is a member of my board, and we do have a lot of engagements in terms of liquidity management. How do we ensure there's enough fund across the OIC countries? And that's what I do, basically. We do it through Sharia compliant manners through Sukuk. Now, one thing I'd like to emphasize here is the facilities are there. Now, whether there's bureaucracy in accessing some of these facilities, that's a different thing. The CBN actually tried its best to establish this. And people like Dr. Jibril Salahuddin, they fought a lot, writing so many moves to the CBN. Unfortunately, those at the CBN were able to come up with this. I know them very well, those who are the core of this initiative. Deputy Governor Aisha Ahmed and others, they are passionate about this. They have provided this. Now, the way the banks, microfinance banks manage this is a different thing. So you have to engage with them and see and perhaps fulfill their conditions. I don't want to go into that. But the CBN has provided alternative, and a lot of brothers fought for this, actually. It wasn't just something to do with. Now, number 3, I would like to think of crowdfunding. Now, people talk about crowdfunding, how do we do it? We don't have the regulations in Nigeria. But I'd like to emphasize that in March 2020, this year, Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria introduced its exposure draft on proposed rules on crowdfunding. And I think this is where the tech startups, many of the brothers and sisters who are here today can actually tap into. How do you actually play that role of crowdfunding intermediaries, developing the portals? This is where you take a fee. This is halal fee, which you're going to take. When you develop the portal, people use your platform to raise funding. You can actually charge them a particular fee, which is purely Sharia compliant. So this we see all over the world. Ethis Ventures in Singapore and in Malaysia, does this all the time. So this is another. There are some others, but I think I don't want to speak so much. I want to give an opportunity to.
Thank you very much, sir.
What is available there? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, Mr. Ridwan Sanusi, can you please tell us if there have been any successful case studies of ethical financing for innovators and startups in Nigeria that in recent times that you've seen in Nigeria?
Okay, all right. Thank you for that beautiful question. Just to quickly add to what Dr. Umar has rightly said, there are different, ethical financing options or Islamic financing options available for innovators like yourselves. So you talked about the CBN, intervention funds, but yeah, like you said, there might be some cases that we do encounter in trying to access these funds. And I think one of the other alternative options that we maybe need to look at is the crowdfunding that you talked about, right? And for software developers and those in technology, I think this is one area that you might begin to tap into, because there are so many investors out there, or should I say Muslim or halal investors out there, who are looking for competitive returns, right? So if you can kind of bridge the gap between those who are looking for funding, right, talking about the SMEs and the entrepreneurs, and those who are looking for those who are actually looking for investment opportunities, right? So create a platform that is structured, that is regulated, and people can actually rely on it. So this is one area that I think a lot of technological, guys can go into, talking about the crowdfunding. And I think one other area that we may also be looking at is, trying to access funding from venture capitalists, right? There's so many of them right here in Nigeria. They may not come across as Muslims, right, or halal, investors, right? But it stands to be corrected. When you're doing private equity or you're getting funds from venture capitalists, it's still in line with principles of Islamic finance, right? So there are some of them have their like venture platform, like CC Hub, and they also have other, PE and venture capitalists. So I think this is also another area that we can begin to tap into, right? So to answer your question about, innovators that have successfully accessed, financing in Nigeria, to be honest, I don't know of any personally, but I do know that there's some innovators who get funds, right? So they may not be equity funds, they may actually be grants from the government or from foreign parties. Recently I think it was even yesterday, yes, I saw a particular video on Instagram about 3 guys from Katsina, one from Katsina, one from Jigawa, and I think the other one from Kano State, right? They're currently in the UK, right? So they got, enrolled into this international program. And if they do pass the program, they will be entitled to winning $1 million, right? So they came up with a very fantastic, innovative idea. So that's one that I know. Honestly speaking, I don't know of any other. Of course, there will be a series of people doing things by the side. I also know of a particular fintech company. I can't mention the name because of confidentiality reasons, that got a very small amount of money from EFINA, right? And I think we should also try to check out EFINA as well in Nigeria. So they support Islamic finance and financial inclusion in Nigeria. So they support, technology, disruptors and innovators. So they got this, small amount of money, just not even up to 1 million naira, but at least it's something that they can start off, whatever they want to do. So they got that as well from FINA. So those are the case studies that I know about, right? So I personally do not know, any innovator or any disruptor that got huge sum of money from the Muslim space. Don't forget, people have a lot of innovators, a lot of fintechs, right, getting funds from foreign investors in Nigeria. Right. I mean, Kuda got, I think, $10 million, right, the other day, Seed Capital. Paystar got $200 million, right? So many of them are getting funds, right? So the foreign investors actually see a lot of opportunity in Nigeria. So I think it's high time we're selling Islamic finance, right, to these foreign investors. And I think one of the problems or challenges that we might be facing in Nigeria is because of the complexity of Islamic finance and the acceptability of Islamic finance itself in Nigeria. Like Dr. Omar has rightly said, a lot of our mentors, right, who are really pushing the CBN, to come up with Islamic finance models that would help to drive financial inclusion. And because Nigeria seems to be a sensitive country, when it comes to Islamic finance, people like to tag it, attach some sentiments to it, and that's why I usually advise people. So when you're coming up with an innovative model, right, so try as much as possible to look at how this model can be of benefit to everyone, right? So without necessarily, attaching some religious sentiments to you, what you want to do, right? So that for a start, people can accept what you want to do, right? So that's what I'm going to say for now.
Thank you very much, sir. Our our enterprise development and professional, Mr. Fatai Olayemi, I would like to ask that we have Paystack, we have InterSwitch, we have Intrazat, we have Fairmoney, we have Therapy, we have Kuda Bank, as Mr. Ridwan Sansi mentioned, we have Flutterwave. Now, we have all this, but we also know that most Islamic financial institutions are not interested in startups and innovators because of the risk. How do you think we can work around that, sir?
Thank you for that question. When I'm addressing funding for entrepreneurs in Nigeria in particular, my first emphasis is not really about the money. The first emphasis is about how do we need to get our businesses funding ready, which I call investment readiness. It is not, of course, so many people will say funding is a major problem for running a successful business in Nigeria. But I say to you categorically, funding is not a problem, so to speak. But the major challenge lies in the business itself, lies in the hands of the entrepreneur himself or herself. One thing about running a successful business, whether in Nigeria or anywhere in the world, is the fact that people forget to even learn what entrepreneurship knowledge is all about. People don't get to, don't forget, if you want to be a doctor, perhaps you must have spent 7 years in the university to learn about medicine. But in business, people just venture into business without necessarily thinking about, entrepreneurial knowledge. I'll give you an instance. Most of innovators, of course, they have the technical knowledge, they have the technical know-how, but when it comes to entrepreneurship knowledge, it is lacking. Before anybody can access funding, whether ethical funding or conventional one, particularly in Nigeria, the person must be able to come up with a bankable business plan. What that means is the person has a good understanding of A to C of that business in terms of business model, in terms of financial aspect of the business, in terms of even the environment, the market, the customers that the person wants to serve. But in most cases, particularly innovators, they focus more on the technicality of their business idea without thinking about entrepreneurship aspect of it. And it is not enough for you to have technical knowledge without having a good understanding of the business environment, the business model, how you want to convert that business idea, how you want to convert that technical knowledge to a money-making venture. So those aspects is very key. If we are going to have access to funding effectively as innovators, I think it is very critical. We have a good understanding of entrepreneurship knowledge. We're able to come up with a bankable business plan for that business idea, and we must be able to communicate uh, that business idea effectively to any stakeholder at any point in time. So for me, like I said, there's no any problem accessing funding. Till tomorrow, people are still accessing funding. I'm very happy you gave an instance of Paystack that was bought for $200 million. That business started 5 years ago, and yes, some businesses started 8, 10 years ago, and they are still complaining about funding opportunity up to now. As we speak, I think it was Dr. Rahman or Mr. Sanusi that talked about the fact that some brothers, some Muslims fought for ethical or Sharia compliant funding opportunities in Nigeria. And as we speak today, that has been approved by the CBN. I don't know if some of us are aware of AXMI's loan. Federal government introduced that fund. AXMI's is AXMI's, that's agri small medium enterprise investment scheme. Yes, AXMI's. Yeah. Initially, that fund was really for everybody. 5% interest, 5% interest rate. But at a point, because of the fact that some Muslims fought for it, now CBN has approved the non-interest element of that fund for Muslims. So if we check with some non-interest banks in Nigeria, like Jais Bank, like Taj Bank, Sun Trust, even Lotus Capital, some of them are participating in this fund. And there are so many other funding opportunity. I remember before COVID, Bank of Industry, they created like 3 billion naira non-interest non-interest funding for Muslims, and that money was to be disbursed through Jais Bank. As at the last time I checked, so I doubt if so many people have really accessed the fund. So those are opportunities available, but like every other funding opportunity available anywhere.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate your response and how you justified the question. Now, Dr. Umar Oseni, you mentioned earlier that recently there's been an intervention by the CBN on non-interest loans. So, are you saying that we can access the loans by CBN and other federal government? Oh, you said you're not in Nigeria. Okay, by the CBN and I'm sorry. There's another question that. Can we access the non-interest finance option of Access Bank run under a conventional banking system?
Okay. Thank you very much, sister.
I'm so sorry, sir. Can you please just do that?
I'm not in Nigeria. That doesn't mean I don't know what's happening there. I'm always here on ground, and here I'm always in Nigeria. Now, one thing I'd like to start with is I'm not here to issue a fatwa, so I won't be here pontificating basically. What I know is that there's no difference between very minimal interest rate and huge interest rate. It's all the same. So scholars have said a lot about this question, and I will not opine on them today. Other more qualified members of the panel or perhaps the next session will be speaking on this. Now, as we rightly said, CBN has provided alternatives, for us to explore through some of the Islamic banks. Now, here is the deal. It's good to emphasize that not all non-interest financing are Islamic, but all Islamic finance products are non-interest based. We have to get this correctly here. Simply saying non-interest doesn't mean it's Islamic. No, when we say non-interest, a lot of efforts go into structuring the products to be purely Sharia compliant. Islamic finance goes beyond zero interest. There is this positive dimension to Islamic finance generally, which is often emphasized under the Maqasid al-Sharia, or what we call the higher objectives of Islamic law. For instance, in Europe, we witnessed what we call the negative rates since last year. The meaning of negative rates here means when you deposit money in a conventional bank, instead of being paid interest, which is riba, you pay to the bank to keep your money. So the rates actually went so low that they went into the negative territory. So people, some of our Muslim brothers across the world were saying, yes, this is actually purely Islamic, it's now below, Well, we have to tell them, calm down. Islamic finance goes beyond just zero interest. So if Access Bank, I have not studied the product because normally before I can speak, I have to look at the whole product disclosure kind of document to actually see how it was structured. Now, if they are just providing non-interest option for people, that doesn't mean it's Islamic. You should be aware that when the CBN introduced Islamic finance during the Sanusi Lamido's administration as the CBN governor, what happened then was they wanted to call it Islamic, but because of the controversy across the country, they had to use the word non-interest. So, but when you look at the regulation they introduced, those non-interest kind of financing were to be implemented through Musharaka, Mudaraba, Murabaha, some of these products. So when you say something is non-interest in terms of the financing option, I have to see more in terms of how is it structured, who approved it, who are the Sharia scholars that approved it ultimately after going through the whole structuring phase. Structuring a product, it involves a lot of efforts, I can tell you. We do that on a daily basis, where we have to structure it from end to end and still take it to the Sharia committee. They reject it ultimately because of one maybe error that is somewhere or any other thing, even though there's no interest in it. So I think it's important for us to look beyond just non-interest option being provided by any bank, whether it's Jais, Taj, or Access Bank. We have to look within it itself. People always say that the details is always, or the devil is always in the details. Yeah, those you gotta change that to the angel is always in the details. Yeah. So
Thank you very much.
I don't want to say much on that because I don't have the details, the facts.
Now we really appreciate our Muslim finance coach. We appreciate you for your response, Mr. Fatai Olayemi. We appreciate you as well. We say Jazakumullah khairan to you all. Now we have questions from our audience, and as much as I would like to ask more questions and you doing justice to what I have for you, time has been fast spent, and it's time for our audience to drop questions, sir.
Yeah, let's have the questions coming. I mean, you have the Muslim coach here, you have the developer here. So let's
since we can't see it yet, let me ask the last question for. Oh, okay. I can see that there's no question from audience yet. Now, Mr. Ridwan Sanusi, you mentioned Islamic venture capitalist. Do we have in our ecosystem?
Okay, thank you for that question. I don't know any structured or any institution that labels itself, Islamic financial venture capital firm, right? But we do have Muslims playing in this sector, right? I'm not going to mention names. I'm sure Dr. Omar also knows those people who actually help to, get funding from foreign investors for these businesses. I mean, the likes of Andela, the likes of Bata, the likes of Flutterwave actually got funding through these people, right? So this is a call to all of us, particularly those who are within the financial space, to see how best we can begin to, put together people that have financial capacity, financial strength, to enable tech guys, innovators, and entrepreneurs access funding. right? So I don't know of any, to be honest, but I do know that we have angel investing or angel investors, club in Nigeria, which I am also a part of. But of course, like Dr. Omar said, what they do in the organization, institution, doesn't really, matter. So what you need to look at is how they structure, this financing. Someone can call something Islamic finance or non-interest finance, right? The detail is what we would have to look at. Okay, so I don't know of any, but we need, our finance experts and more importantly, angel investors to begin to look into this direction.
Now, thank you. I can see a question here. Sakab Lafiz asked that, can we get a brief illumination on the ethical considerations which is Islamic based, involving Forex as an option for investment with regards to salary earners, Muslims who aim at financial stability? I don't know if you can see it from your side.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Now, can you please do justice to that?
Okay, I'm going to do justice to that, and I'd also like, Dr. Romero to speak to that as well. All right, so when it comes to investment in Forex, to be honest, Forex is not permissible in Islam. And the scholars have looked at, the Forex market, because you need to understand the principles of Islamic finance first before you can begin to say if one investment option is halal or is haram. And Forex, to the best of my knowledge, right, violates all the principles of Islamic finance, right? Because Forex is a speculative instrument, right? A speculative instrument derives its value from an underlying asset. So if you understand how the Forex market works, right, you would say that they make margins on a transaction, right? So the money that they make on the transaction is not so huge. So that's why they need to do volume of transactions, right? So sometimes those who actually trade in Forex also do lend, right, to the Forex traders, right? So when you see a Forex trainer telling you about Forex, you open YouTube, you always see them right on YouTube. They are inviting you to come and trade in Forex because they know that, the more the merrier, right? And sometimes they do lend. And of course, when they lend, right, the lending involves riba. So Forex, violates the principle of riba, it violates the principle of, speculative instruments. It also violates the principle of sometimes, right, uncertainty, right, and gambling. So I would advise salary earners to look at ethical or non-interest or Islamic finance options that are available by this, asset management companies in Nigeria like Lotus Capital, and others, rather than going for Forex.
Now, Dr. Umar Oseni, can you just briefly make an addition to that?
Well, I think my brother has actually said it all. I endorse everything he has said. Basically, yes, I know there's that kind of challenge in Nigeria where people actually look for, where we can make more money. And Forex actually is always staring at our eyes, all the time. It comes to your email just like that. So I think we try to avoid it. You see, when it comes to Forex, not all Forex trades are actually non-Sharia compliant. But most of the things you have in Nigeria in terms of individual or kind of companies inviting you to invest, I think, as the brother rightly said, they are actually non-Sharia compliant. It's better to avoid them. Deploy your funds to, ethical financing, Lotus and other banks that provide these to you. And if you can do it as well, why not you invest in, some of the innovators and Muslim entrepreneurs? I mean, they are there. Invest in them. Now, the type of Forex that is Islamic is something different, which we use when it comes to swap trading. Swap is a real kind of.
Can you come again, sir?
Swap, we have what we call Islamic swap, SWAP. I mean, here it is again structured to be Sharia compliant. So it's not just, oh, I have this kind of Forex involved, log in and you can invest. No. This is done by the bank, and they use it for their risk mitigation in terms of structuring a product to deal with other corporate entities like banks, not for individuals. So this is well known in most countries like Malaysia, UAE, and others. It's purely a risk mitigant for the banks, not for individual investors. So I think it's better we just avoid this, and as much as possible, we think of alternative ethical finance. Now, I give you an example finally before I end here. When you look at Musdev, and the good thing Musdev is doing, alhamdulillah, we're having this event today. You see, we have a lot of innovators here today. We have a lot of entrepreneurs here today. how can we mobilize them together, form clusters within MOSDEV itself? Like we're talking about fintech today, we have RecTech, we have other people focusing on education. We just had a panel focusing on health. So how can you bring these entrepreneurs and innovators together and see how we can mobilize funding for them? When we talk about crowdfunding, brothers and sisters, you don't have to wait for Securities and Exchange Commission to get funds. You can do crowdfunding within MOSDEV platform. Come together, mobilize, and channel those funds to innovators. But again, you have to have strict rules in terms of partnership agreements that are binding to be enforceable. So those NRP like the question we had, they can bring it to a MOSDEV platform, and we'll get brothers who can invest them to innovate something good. Yeah, for the Ummah.
So we can contact you anytime, sir.
Yeah, I'm not saying me. I'm talking about them. I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Noted. We say a big jazakumullah khairan to our three speakers. We hope when we have any other program or that we have to discuss anything fintech, we can call you again, sir. Jazakumullah khairan. Over to you, Mr. Abdullah.
Okay, alhamdulillah, that was an amazing session about us following where the money is. And I think we've gone from 2 stages now. We've had the health tech session, and they've also told us about how we can pursue the money. So, Ibrahim,
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, is it the fair of the conventional system that, okay, when I borrow money now, Jais, all of them, people have that notion that they're still the same. Do you think this session has been able to clarify and then how we can pursue the money?
Well, I actually think that the session has actually shed more light on some certain aspects. I think for a very long time I've been getting questions about, especially the last thing they mentioned, forex and all. So how did you go? I mean, how can Muslims go into forex? And I think I tell them most of the time that you don't have to. You have a lot of options rather than going to forex, especially here in Nigeria. So it's actually a really, an eye opener to ethical finance for Muslims, basically.
Okay, that's so. I think we've been hearing a lot about how money and then how to build a working health sector. So I think moving forward now, we will introduce our next session, because of course our audience should be aware that we're going to go for a break, and then don't forget that our hashtag is much functioning. Make noise on Twitter about what's happening live, and then others come on board. So Ibrahim, over to you.
Yes, you can actually use either hashtag MusDevConf20 or hashtag MusDev to tweet and talk about this conference. Now, on to the next session. It's